There you are. Awesome. Elijah music tour coming soon to your city. Elijah's here, so he'll pop up on the screen in a hot minute. Just ran to get some water. Okay, so man, so much happening. So much is happening in coming out of Washington. Man, I'm just every day I wake up
Mm.
and my head is spinning, trying to comprehend it. Did you listen at all,
Hmm.
Elijah, to the conversation that Lori and I had on Monday?
Yeah, yeah, actually. It's so funny. I was actually on YouTube. I had no idea that you were streaming. And then I went on YouTube and I was on the homepage and you showed up on my recommendations. And I
Uh,
was like, what is this? And then I clicked on it and it was a live stream of you and Laurie. I was like, all right, and I
yeah.
stayed. So that was, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's intense. Like
And
I just wanted to ask her. I mean, it was so. I mean, that's it's all stuff that she and I talk about all the time. But there's like the specific questions like that I wanted to put her on this be live. So like she has to really kind of think. Not that she's always serious and carefully thinking through things anyway. But just
yep.
that question, like when is it? When do you ever really want to take sides? Just jump in, man.
What was
And
her, what did,
what was her
that was a
answer?
question, that was one of the questions that you asked her?
It was kind of what was framing the conversation. It's what led me into the conversation. And her answer
Because,
basically, because I asked her again this morning, very specifically that, and she said, uh, "Nothing. I never want to take sides." I'm like, damn,
mm,
it's just so. I had, I
it,
was so deep. It's so deeply moving that she can can hold that, you know.
yeah, it feels like impossible just like thinking about it because like she brought up the analogy of football, right? Like she brought the Super Bowl
Mhm.
up, like how we're just so entrenched and like needing to take a side, and it feels she was saying it feels so it's like a gravitational pull to like take a side. And so like I think she said something like that or like something along the I
Yeah,
forget the
yeah,
exact
that's right.
language.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
when you say she feels so moved, like it feels so moving to hear her say that. Like I get it, especially when you think about like the pull that you feel to take a side. So the fact that she can
Oh
like
my
separate
gosh.
herself from that.
Oh my gosh. It's so powerful, you know? And you don't she's not wired for that anyway. She just was never really into sports. Um like
Hmm.
musicians, she didn't have like her favorite bands that she gushed over kind of stuff. Like uh
Right.
she's not necessarily wired, but that doesn't but we do that. People do that, especially, in times like that, like we're in, man, when people are just, really kind of pulling us and
Yeah.
uh
Is
Josiah
d-
Christensen, any advice for a white male navigating woke campus? Yeah, here's what you do. I got one for you. Recognize that it's never a woke campus, right? Like, okay, Elijah, walking around Penn State, what do you see when you walk around Penn State day in and day out? You just see
uh
people walking,
yeah,
right?
just walking. Yeah, 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 vibing out. Just
You see
walking. Maybe
people
not even
talking to
vibing
each
out,
other.
walking.
You see this, you see that. You're like, it's not. You wouldn't even know
Right.
it's woke at all,
Yeah,
right?
it's like what is woke? Like what is woke when you're I don't know. I couldn't answer that
Yeah,
question just looking at students or seeing
yeah.
like
Even
walking on
listening to
campus. I
most of
couldn't
them.
answer that.
Yeah, yeah, and even if you sat down and listened to most of them, the vast majority of the time, they're not talking about any politicized issues or whatever. So you
Most
have
of the
to
time.
most of the time. So like for
Yeah.
me, yeah, I see the billboards and I see the little flyers that are up or like the messages coming from the administration, and I just sort of say, okay, okay, all right, that's cool. Yeah,
That's when you're talking about the when you ask Laura the question like do you ever like see messages or like there's a narrative that you're being pushed to take a side and like how often do
yeah.
you force yourself to like, whoa, stop. Like, wait, I need to pull back for a second and be
Yeah.
like, wait, why am I like following that, or why am I like rejecting it, or like what is it that I need to like think about to
Yeah.
understand more, kind of thing. And that's when
Yeah.
Laurie was
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, I've always been trained to be like that."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's what was going on in that message that brought you that question, like, "Oh, I need to zoom out." Like, why?
Well, yeah, because I find myself, like I was sharing with a buddy of mine this morning about a few books that, that he and I, are aware of, read, that kind of thing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that are really like long-term analyses of the human condition, right? Of society and
Feel free to list
nations.
those.
So yeah, well, yeah, yeah. At different time, I will. But the rise and fall of nations, the rise of agricultural and then industrial society, and now post-industrial society, and like and what it means, and what it means in different parts of the world, and that just um, it's so vast that to get caught up in the idiosyncrasies or the tiny nuances of what's happening directly around us, thinking that this is like you got to zoom out. You have to zoom out and say like this whole movement that
When
we're in right now will be gone. Just like the '60s, when you're in it, you're thinking, "Oh my God, this is just wow, groundbreaking, going to shape the future of life on Earth." And to a degree it did, but then it's gone, and then we move on to something else. And I think for me, I'm constantly always kind of taking the the particular and kind of being able to touch it and think about it, and then zooming out and seeing all the larger factors and forces that are at play. Yeah.
like based on the premise that things are just like you're able to feel the particular and then zoom out of it based on your premise that like things that it will change eventually,
It will
or
change.
that there
Things will
eventually be
change. Yeah, we'll weather the
okay,
storm, right? The hurricanes go,
right,
and the hurricanes come, and the storms come and go, and we get through them. And they sometimes, they're really violent, and they leave a lot of really destruction in their path. But then,
right,
we rebuild and we move on, and
right.
that's and then you say, "Wow, okay." When I was in Vietnam and just in all these places, in this parts of Hanoi, where like
Mm-hmm.
where bombing happened, right? I mean, it was that we're
Right.
really destroyed, and then they're rebuilt. You think, wow, okay, here we are. So I don't know,
What
just that kind of stuff.
I was curious when
Um,
you said when you said idiosyncrasies, what were you thinking about? Or because you just said idiosyncrasies, and I kind of was lost in the term.
yeah, well, maybe
But
that might be the wrong word, but I'm kind of watching,
mm,
and not to say these things they don't have great value, but I'm watching. Just let's say Trump's these kind of new policies. Trump's jumping in,
right,
and the kinds of man, it's such a disruption to the system, man. And what
right,
Trump is doing right now, in so many ways, it's like the system's like it's like the world's built on these structures, and there's these iron, like you watch a building getting built, right? And so the iron beams go up and they're all like welded and bolted together, and they're very
mm-hmm,
strong. And then along, you know, comes this person who they're just undoing the bolts, some of them loosening bolts here and there, removing bolts in some places. And I'm like, man, yo, be careful. That could come crashing down, that part of the building kind of thing.
right,
And
right,
and I think sometimes that I don't I never want to think that I don't like think I'm smarter than other people, because I generally don't think that way, but I'm aware of I mean, I don't think that way. I'm smarter than some people, whatever smarter is, like I'm more aware than some people, that's for sure.
right,
But
right.
because I think because I put my attention to things, right?
Hmm. Well,
And
you're not attached to the side. Like, who know? I'm not going to fill words in, but I also understand that you're not like attached to sides of things. Like, you want to contemplate before you make
yeah, I want to,
a
yeah, like
decision.
what Lori was saying on Monday, she wants to get to truth, right? So I want to get to truth. But
Right.
anyway, but I'm
Right.
seeing that, whoa, man, you're like loosening some of these big important bolts in this system that I think are important. I don't know that they are, but I feel like they might be. Some of them are for sure. Because we
Right.
can all agree that there are certain pieces of a structure that if you loosen that or weaken it, it's going to be it's going to be a mierdero, man, a shitstorm, right? And
Hmm. Yep.
we can all agree, everybody can agree on that, but we don't know what those things are. And and sometimes it looks like you're
Like what those
weakening,
consequences are?
yeah, what the consequences are, and we don't know which of all these rivets and big welds and bolts and
Oh,
stuff holding these massive structures together. We don't know which ones need to be removed to actually strengthen it, right? So you remove these
right.
things that, oh my God, don't pull that out. And then we realized, no, you had to get rid of that because you have to strengthen it in a different way, right? Because it was
Y-
actually weak down here. And
Yeah. You're reminding me of Jenga,
yeah,
like that game,
exactly.
and
It's
you
just
like
like
pull
Jenga.
out. You're like,
Yeah, yeah. One
okay,
it looks like one thing is really, really a problem, and then boom, it's like, no, 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 that was actually good. That needed to come out of there, right? And so
right,
we
right.
don't know that. So I'm watching, and every day I wake up and I sort of, I scroll through the news like this, like, oh, wait, what? God,
With one eye
going,
open.
yeah. and and some things I'm like, oh my God. And then other things I have enough wisdom to sit back and say, all right, hang on, take a deep breath. Because I think of
Mm,
all these other times in my life when when I had thought things were going to fall apart,
hmm.
and I predicted they would fall, and they actually didn't. The opposite happened, and I think, God, well, that was
It
pretty.
improved.
That was yeah, that wasn't very smart of me. So I'm very reluctant to ever make public proclamations at all. And what Lori was
Right.
saying, what Lori and I were saying Monday, I don't know if you remember, but
Mm,
it's not our job to do that anyway. Our job is something else, right? And her job is to help people to see the things they have in common with other people, right? Because this is what
yep.
she's training you to do. So
Right.
um,
The
that's the big,
connections.
yeah,
The
she can't do
bridges.
that. Yeah, she can't do it here while she's taking sides somewhere else. And what
Right.
you have all these people now who are you talking about, we need to listen to the other side, but they don't have any practice in doing it. So it's a really easy
Yep.
thing to say, listen to our opponents, listen to our enemies, listen to sit down and talk to all the people we disagree with. That's really nice in theory, but man, you got to have really strong muscles to do that. And Lori, right? Because your muscles they're just
Working.
you're just
Yeah.
training, you're working them, man. But Lori's are
Yo,
so strong, man. Somebody could, man, she just can the stuff that she can tolerate, uh, listening
those
to.
muscles, yeah. Those muscles are prepped and ready for a bodybuilding contest whenever.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like where
yeah,
they're like
yeah,
they're always
yeah.
flexed and ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. At any moment, man, with her, at any moment, I never see her get flustered in a way. So the thing is, you got all these people that they're talking the talk, but they don't know how to walk it. They just don't, and you wouldn't know if you haven't been doing it for decades, right? Especially right now when the stakes are so high, and
Right.
man, you can't just have the idea, okay, well, yeah, we're gonna do this and come together, and like, nah, man. So.
And you're
Um,
making me think about the other point that Laurie talks about is like it's hard to be a facilitator and a participant.
Yeah,
Like to
yeah,
listen and to, like, 'cause there's so much you already have to hold. So
yeah,
like they're thinking the premise is all you have to do is listen, but then
Yeah.
like what comes with listening is reaction and like having to
Yeah.
hold like multiple sides but and like disagree and like there's so many things you have to do as if
Yeah.
you're a participant and a
Yeah.
facilitator at the same time.
It's so
And
intense.
yeah.
Elpidio has your back on that, man. He's got that. Well said. Yeah. Yeah, it really
Appreciate
is.
that, boss.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, man. It's so anyway, that's it. That's kind of where and that's where I'm at right now. Yesterday I made a joke in class about Trump and how like whatever you think about this guy, for me, he's gold, man. He's just serving up gold to me, right? And maybe that's not what some people want to hear, but like I have a job to do. My job is to get students to get people, not just students, but whoever is watching, to
yeah,
just think in nuanced ways, as that one woman said in class yesterday,
right.
layered ways, right? She said that what I've discovered in this class is there are just so many layers of things, right? Okay, that's my job, man. I
That's
don't,
awesome.
yeah, isn't that cool? That'll be a short for us. That was really cool.
That should be,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And
That's like
so,
the core
yeah,
of
that's it.
what.
Just layers. It's just layers. But the thing is, if you like her, she's starting to see layers, but me, I'm like, man, the layers that I see, there's just so many more layers that it makes it difficult for me to come down anywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
Do you guys want to do or cover a little bit of breaking news?
Yeah, what do you got?
Big fan of comedy uh, was informing me that when we were preparing for the live stream, this was has broken from NPR, and it's maybe about 3 hours old for the oldest source I could find.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Trump
yeah,
spoke with Russia's Putin and Ukraine's Zelensky about talks to end the war. So
yeah. Listen,
it's
man, I saw
crazy.
that he spoke with Putin, and I didn't know if he spoke with Zelensky, but yeah, listen, man. This is the thing, right? Uh, Trump, for all of his Trumpiness, could could pull this off. So this is the beautiful thing of like uh this is the beautiful thing of someone who's so full of hot air. You know what I mean?
The
Like
beauty.
sometimes,
What's the beauty?
yeah, well, the beauty is that sometimes that hot air gets directed somewhere and it really comes through. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
this made me when seeing that Trump went to go talk to Putin. I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, but there was a time where I was watching a podcast and this
Yeah.
author was on and she wrote a book. She was a a war. She was an investigator. She was a journalist for war and she would like interview She was like a military journalist, like and would
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
interview different military personnel around the world. And she wrote this book called um, like over. I think it's like it was about nuclear war and the potential to
Uh-huh.
be like in like this nuclear winter for like
Yeah.
in like 60 minutes. I forget her
Yeah.
name, but
Uh-huh. It's recent, right?
sh yeah, very recent book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
like the
Okay. I
last
got it.
year.
I remember. Yeah.
And she was talking and she was like, what's so scary is, these presidents or like people in power, um, like, well, they won't talk to each other. Like, I think she was speaking about
Hmm.
Biden and Putin,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how they
Yeah.
weren't
Yeah.
communicating and they just weren't on speaking terms, and
Yeah.
how there's like narratives from both sides, and all it takes is like one narrative to be misinterpreted, and then next thing you know, you could
Yeah.
like press a button for like nuclear warfare. And
Well,
I think it's cool to see that, like at least Trump
yeah.
is in
Well,
communication, or I'm
here's
not sure what kind of communication that is, but just the idea if you're not speaking to, and yet there's like power on both sides to like create crazy detriment.
here's
Um,
the thing,
yeah,
right?
what's
So I have two things, but also, Jeff, I want to respond to Eric Sell's comment from a little bit ago. Not the second though, about about being invested in morality and truth. I won't, but not yet. I think that what is happening all the time are there these back channel conversations that are going on constantly.
What a
right? So there's
back channel like?
yeah, back channel. Like, our diplomats are talking to diplomats all
Got
over
it.
the world, and different people are talking to other people, and they're talking through folks. You know what I mean? So, like, the Israelis and the Palestinians are talking to each other through the Qataris, right? And the
Got it.
Turks and so on in Doha. And so, I mean, so there are these back channel conversations. Now, mind you, there's the Trump team is a little bit, this especially happened the first time around, that they just didn't have a team in place in the State Department, and they just started shaking up the State Department in ways that were really actually pretty dangerous.
Like they didn't have a
And
diplomatic team, or
yeah, their diplomatic team was just very inexperienced, and they weren't listening to these State Department people who have been involved in diplomacy.
wow,
Tier one diplomacy, nation to nation, for decades and decades. So much experience, and so that was a little scary. Talking to folks. I had a couple people in the State Department, really
wow.
high up, who were like, "Man, that was disturbing." Right. This
That's the
time
fact. There's
around,
no
there's
one to
also like,
help start
yeah,
conversations.
there's no one to shepherd this along. It's like suddenly you're given the control of an airplane, and you like don't know how to fly the airplane, but you demand control of it, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm in control now, and but you don't know how to
Wow.
fly the damn thing.
And you have
And there
like
are all
no
these
flight
people.
coordinators
You
like
got
that are
nothing. You got very little, and you got people trying to tell you, like, listen, man, you can't do this and you can't do that, and be careful here, and but not really listening. But eventually, things kind of settle down, right? Well, right now, there's
right.
another huge disruption, man. That is so. But I'm hoping that things will settle down. So there's all this back channel stuff that goes on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. But there could be moments when it just doesn't happen, or the messages get, and there have been over the past 50 years, when the messages between the Russians and the American, the Soviet Union and the US and the
Get
Chinese, they get,
misinterpreted.
yeah, misinterpreted. Things happen, and
Wow.
so anyway,
And that's
um
so dangerous, right?
yeah, well,
Like, or
it's
maybe,
really dangerous. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
wow.
It's really problematic. So, and a lot of people who think they know and they don't know, like, and at the same time, you have, a lot of, you got diplomats that it's just purely business as usual. And so, somebody like Trump, who stakes his claim, his ego is so involved. Once he says something, I'm going to do so. Some things aren't going to happen. Like, the U.S. is never going to take over Gaza, man. So that you're not going to build hotels, and it's not going to, mark my words. I say never. I'm going to hold this one. It's never going to happen. So Trump can,
Right.
blow hot air all he wants, but that's not happening. But this other one, like, he invests his ego into this. Like, he's going to stop this war in Ukraine, and neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are going to get what they want, and that's and nor will the Americans really get exactly what they want.
Mm.
The Americans, certainly,
Um,
there are a lot of Americans, they just want to keep selling weapons. So I mean,
who?
that tells
The
you,
Americans?
yeah, the military industrial complex, man, the weapons
Right.
machine, they just want to keep selling stuff, right? I mean, there are all sorts of
Right.
interests, right? But Trump, his ego's in it, man. So maybe he'll just go for it. I don't know. And so I just
Mm.
kind of sit back and say, we'll see.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. What are you seeing that's like, oh, Ukraine won't get what they want, Russia won't get what they want, America won't get what they want by like
Yeah.
America
Well, that means
intervening.
it will be a successful resolution if nobody gets what they want, because that
Got
means
it.
everyone will get some of what they want.
So, got it.
Everybody doesn't. Everybody has their ideal resolution, and nobody's going to get their ideal resolution. Okay, well, that's a good thing,
Right.
but everyone's going to
Hmm.
get some of what they want, and that's a good thing.
Right.
And so now it's
Right.
just a matter of how you sort of arrange things, right? And
And
so,
that's like the
I mean,
new solution. That's the different solution.
yeah,
Or
exactly. That's what it is. That's like Lori with the elephant and the blind scholars, right? No one's going to
yeah,
be able to say that their truth is the truth, but some people are. Everyone's going to contribute their truth to it. And you look at
yep.
Ukraine and you think, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think, what if instead of what if when the war happened, what if NATO had stepped into the Ukraine and just said, "Hey, listen, we're not going to help you at all here. Russia's going to come over. They're either taking over Crimea, they're taking over this whole section of Ukraine, right? They say it's theirs, whatever. It's not, but whatever. We're not going to give you anything to fight them, and you're just going to live under Russian rule right now. And maybe that'll change in 10 or 20 years, but that's what it's going to be. All the destruction, all the destruction of life, all the people who left Ukraine, all just uprooted their lives, all the people who've died, all the people who've been wounded, all the people who have psychological wounds, all the destruction of buildings and everything. So much that none of it would have happened. And the Ukrainians would just be living under Russian rule. It's like,
Mm,
okay, well,
is
how would that be? Like, how would that be? Like, you know what I
is
mean? Did we really need it all? Right. So,
yeah, is that like the what made you think about that? Is that like the philosophy of like conceding, if that's the right
no, but
word?
yeah,
Like
well,
or
maybe, but I guess I know enough people that, I mean, I, I was in Kyiv. Lori and I were there for a NATO conference that she spoke at. And like, I feel it, right? I talked to people who had fought in the first war in 2014, right? And they were still battling on the front, still battling the Russians. They were raising
wow.
money in Kyiv and they were doing all sorts of stuff, right? So we were talking to them. Like, we went down to the area where the public was coming together, and they were putting together all these camouflage things. People would bring different colors of brown and green and gray material, and they would weave it into this netting, and then they would put it over tanks and put it over even people's houses and things, so the Russians couldn't bomb it, right? So, and
What
so
was that for?
people this was in 2018, and this was these are just the Ukrainians coming together to fight the Russians, right? They're
But
the
why
way
were
the
they
public.
netting?
Yeah, because the Ukrainians are fighting the Russians in a guerrilla warfare battle, right? And so
Which is like
you're out in
hand
the
to
open, man.
hand.
Yeah. Well, the Russians have their drones and stuff, so they're looking down and they can see a Ukrainian tank or a Ukrainian artillery unit or something, and so you got to put all this meshing over it so it looks like you're blending in with the earth, and the drones can't see it,
Oh,
right? So the
oh.
public, there were all these women, and mostly women, but also men down there, just tables and tables, just huge areas, just set up, just making stuff like this, right? Anyway, the
Wow.
point being, uh, just what would have happened if we would have done that? And how many people would have their children back, or their parents back, or whoever, like, that they didn't die? I don't know. It's just a thing. I just like, I'm thinking all the time, like, we choose war, and I don't know, man. Anyway,
You're
Jeff, can you go
asking how
back?
many oh,
Go ahead.
okay. You're like, if we would have done that, are you saying specifically like,
If NATO would not have, if they'd have just quickly said to Ukrainians, "Hey, we're not going to back you on this. Just don't fight. Just accept that you're going to be
got
ruled
it.
by the Russians, and we'll battle it out
Okay.
in the world court, right? We'll support you. We'll deal with it with the UN and the world court. We'll work it out there. But right now, you just
Wow.
gotta just
That's so
relax."
interesting. Do you think like there would have been the same effect or morale like if like let's say lives were saved, but then like cultures, do you think culture would change or like the
No, not
way
at all.
there
No, the
it would just
cultures aren't.
be
Yeah,
got it.
that's not that. It's not that hugely different. And so many Ukrainians just speak Russian anyway, because of, especially in that particular area of, and everybody in Ukraine of a certain age, definitely anybody my age and around my age, they all speak Russian because it was part of the Soviet Union. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's just war is it's just brutal, man. I don't know.
Yeah. That
Okay,
makes me okay.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna keep doing that. We're like, let's switch, and I'm like, well, I just kept thinking, like, is that the difference? Is that like the difference between like emotional debt? Like, I could imagine, like, if your country is taken over by another one, like, then there's
For
like an
sure.
emotional death versus like actual death, like the death
Well,
of another part of you, or like morale death, or like affect death because like you're
sure.
the pride versus like literal casualties and
But
like
right?
what's
How many people
yeah
have died because of pride?
yeah
Really? Think about, like road rage, right? And how people get so enraged over stupid things. It's like pride. You cut me off. Oh my God, whatever. Who cares? Really, like it doesn't matter. And like, look, if it's different here. We can't say like, oh, what if, but if you go to the Southwest and you're in southern Arizona or southern New Mexico or a southern part of Texas around Corpus Christi or something, and imagine at some point in time Mexico just sort of came up and took a huge swath of that, where
right.
everybody already speaks Spanish anyway, right? Or half the
Mm,
people are fluent in Spanish, and suddenly now you're part of Mexico instead of part of the U.S. How much different I'm thinking like a sociologist here, right?
mm,
How different is your
mm,
life? And you got to go down there. And I've been down there and I walk back and forth across the border and I'm on one side, then I go to the other side. And obviously Mexico's a lot poorer, but imagine that it's it, even with that, right? Like
mm.
how much how many people would just be like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. Here we are. I mean,
Okay.
most people wouldn't do that, but would you rather lose half your family and would you rather have everything destroyed? I mean, I don't know. It's a lot of what
Yeah.
if, but point being, like we just immediately we go to war and battle and fight and maybe just man.
Right.
So
So it's
hang on,
like almost.
neighbor broke into your house
Yep.
and yeah, yeah. Well, I, yeah, Scott. That's a really good question. Uh,
Mm,
if it meant, if it meant uh, that if by fighting back, I might lose my wife, right, or my kids, or my own life, or it meant that like one of us, my kids or some. Well, I don't have kids, but if I did, like they had to leave and go somewhere else instead of just being like, yeah, here you just occupied my basement, right? So my basement is like say 30% of my house. I would be like, yeah, well, whatever, occupy my basement because I don't have. If the alternative is a violence that with consequences that I don't want to endure, then I would say, yeah, occupy the basement. It's unjust, it's wrong, and I'll try to kick you out of the basement eventually. And that would be my answer. And I'm not saying I guess what I'm saying is that uh, it's not right. It's completely wrong. They're just these things are really the world is as human beings migrated around the world and nations change, and like again, I don't know, Elijah, if I ever, there are these maps of what year of the nation state boundaries of Europe over the past
mhm.
1,000 years. And you just see the maps changing like every year.
Wow.
It just changes. And like,
That's
man,
interesting.
Europe has just been the most violent land geographic area on the face of the earth. Europeans, don't let anyone ever tell you Europeans are not violent, man. We are the most violent people ever, and only
Right.
because of the nation states that we grew in a small area, and the nation states became really, just battled each other, right?
Right.
So anyway, I don't know. They're just
That
Hey, anyway,
it's
Jeff, can you go back to Eric's? Can you put Eric's thing up from a long time ago, man? Oh, it's his goal. So I said Trump's goal for you. Yeah. So here's the problem. I'm not uninvested in morality and truth. Okay. My job is to get students to reflect on and wrestle with the layers of morality and truth. And knowing that a third of my students are really happy that Trump's in power, a third are really unhappy that Trump's in power, and a third don't really care because they're busy thinking about whether the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. And then once they win, they're busy about going down into the streets in State College and having a big party and rioting and tearing down lampposts or whatever. Not everybody did
stop
that. But some
signs
people,
too.
yeah, down signs and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because that's the case, uh, and it I have to hold if I don't hold that really tightly, I really I lose my mind, man. I lose my mind. I could never do what I do. I wouldn't be able to. I would feel just so enraged constantly and afraid. And so I have to take a step back and I have to do what Lori does, which is suspend her own sense of moral codes, moral coding, her own moral order, whatever it is, because it's constantly changing, right? I have to suspend mine and I have to get in and do my job and hope that if I do my job well enough, then I can, then students will be, they will be better than human beings, and that's it. And then because I've been around long enough, I can also say I'm not really sure. Like Biden, there wasn't a chance that Biden was going to solve the war in Ukraine and Russia, but Trump might, man. Like, damn, he might do this, that egotistical Trump, man. He's a Trump. He's his own thing. You know what I mean? There's no noun for him, actually. He's just a Trump. And he might do it. God. And I hope he does. I hope he succeeds. And I don't want, this is the thing, man. There are a lot of people, they want Trump to not succeed. And I'm like, I don't want him to not succeed, man, because this guy, some of the stuff that he's doing, some of the way he's loosening, we talked about the structure of of these buildings and how potentially damaging this is, what he's doing. Like, man, I don't want him to lose I want him to succeed.
Yeah.
Because
Like
this
his
is gonna be,
failures would be worse than his successes.
oh my God, right? Hey, Logan Pizza, man. I want to respond so I've been dealing with the friction in my head of the idea that not all cultures are created equal. Is this a bad thought to have? No, not at all. We're all created differently. And there are certain parts of some cultures that are really effed up, man. Like I have a few that I jump. And the reason I know this is because so Elijah, female genital mutilation. There's nothing in me. I can't get anywhere that in any part of that is any part of it is okay. Anything. There's nowhere. I've tried. I've been in long conversations back and forth with women from Sudan and a woman from Niger who really supported female genital mutilation, cutting of the clitoris is what you're doing. You're desensitizing women. And
So it's not like, okay. So
that's what you're doing.
It's getting rid of the clitoris. It's not like tying the tube so like you can't get pregnant anymore.
No. It's
something different.
It's desensitizing so women aren't going to feel the arousal and that they would normally feel. Women are a vessel for men, man. That's kind of it. And that's that's it. And they can say that people will argue that, well, there's a health component to it. It's like, no, not at all, man.
Wow.
But I've been in deep conversations with women, educated women who are like into
are
that.
for
There's
it?
nothing. There's nothing at all. So that's a cultural practice. That's not a culture, okay? But it is a cultural practice that I'm just like, nah. There's not. No, you got or honor killing is another one that's like we're still seeing so many honor killings in certain cultures and
Like
mostly the Muslim
suicidal, like
world. At
honor
least
kill, like
God, no, like
what's an
families,
honor
like you
killing?
would like you have a sister and your sister dishonors. She marries outside of your clan, or she runs
Oh,
away with
she.
her boyfriend and she's not married, and you're like you've dishonored our whole family, as if that's gonna that's gonna dishonor your family. But whatever. People there are these cultural codes in which people believe
So
this.
they'll kill her?
And then you go out because your job as the oldest, as the brother, is to go out and murder your sister because she's dishonored your family. And then you go to prison, and then but that's okay. You spend the rest of your life
Wow.
in prison, or maybe you don't because you're not even prosecuted at certain points in time. So honor killing, there's another one, man. Uh,
Shoot.
so there are cultural practices. So Logan Pizza that are just like, nah, there's nothing. No, it's zero, man. There's a lot of other ones too, but I'll just pick those two out. And
Phew.
because of that, but those don't define an entire culture, right? So they're just things inside of certain cultures that are not inside of other cultures that are very problematic. This culture, for example, are the televangelist world. I mean,
What's a
like the idea these
televangelist?
televangelists can just go and shake people down for their money because they need to buy a big airplane or a big church or live like lavishly or whatever. That's just like there's nothing in that. That to me is at the level of female genital mutilation kind of thing. It's like it's just so horrific and
Right.
dishonorable and disrespectful. It's just
Right.
and oh my God.
So like,
So
yeah, I was just
there you
thinking
go, man.
like the
Yeah,
super
these
church
guys.
guys.
Yeah, that to me is
Just
just disgusting, man.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
okay, I'm
yeah.
not going to put it on the level
Mhm.
of FGM or honor killing, but but as a
It's
sociologist,
definitely dishonorable.
I'll just put it in a category of just
Right.
horrible, man.
Right. Because
So
yeah,
there we
there's
go.
you're not in no way are you trying to support your community or
All right. All right. See ya, Eric.
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Why is it that in the United States we have a very strong uh, desire for female genital mutilation to not happen, but circumcision is a part of many American lives for generations?
No, it's a part of many cultures all over the world, actually. Well, one,
Wasn't that for cleanliness? Or am I wrong?
yeah, well, that's one for sure. But
Okay.
listen, but here's the thing: circumcision doesn't desensitize uh, men, and FGM absolutely and fundamentally desensitizes women. That's the whole thing, and so there. Yeah. So grandpa, but circumcision doesn't desensitize, is the thing. And FGM does. So, yeah.
I
But,
don't
you can,
I don't think that's true. It definitely there is a difference between desensitizing to a degree and then like removing a part that is for sensations.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
men who are not circumcised do have more like nerve endings and such that when you circumcise, they get cut
They
off
get
with
cut
it.
off.
Right.
Yeah. It's not the primary purpose, but it
It
definitely
isn't the
does.
primary purpose, but it does happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Elijah, the main story that I was always heard is, or that I heard was like, it was a religious purpose. It was a covenant that Abraham made with God, and then that was passed to the Jewish people, who was then passed it on to Christians, and the Puritans in the United States had that as keeping the covenant.
I was going to ask that actually because that's I actually remember that from a comedy. It was a comedy movie I watched where the has anyone seen Ricky Stenicki?
No.
Anyway,
No.
John Cena's the actor. You got it's pretty funny. But anyway, he there was a circumcision uh, where this guy pretends to be um, like he's this dude that they made anyway he does a circumcision and it's like a Jewish tradition that they do
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
movie.
The bris.
Yeah,
All right, listen,
the
man.
bris.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with M169. There's a huge gap between losing some and losing it all. Yeah, that's right. It's a huge gap. All right, what do we have? Do we have any questions from or comments or questions from the stream? Morning together. All right, this was the class.
This was from class 8, which was last Thursday.
Okay. All right.
My bad. I was in the wrong spot.
All right.
First, we're going to start with the questions that were asked on stream.
Why do we focus on remembering tragic events like the Holocaust while overlooking other horrific events? Yeah. Well, one is because the Holocaust is, I think, let me just, one is because the Holocaust involved, man, the World War II Holocaust. Let me see if I can put this in how I can say this. It involved, man, I don't even, it's such an obvious answer. The answer, man, it's such an obvious answer. It's not just that so many more people were killed. They were killed within the context of a systematic destruction of people, and not just Jewish people, because, many other people were killed in the Holocaust. I think the Rwandan genocide, among people who paid attention to the Rwandan genocide, it was about 900,000 people were killed in the Rwandan genocide over a period of I don't remember, 45 days or something, a very short period of time. And just really, really horrible. It still is remembered by many people. It's talked about. I talk about it all the time. I think about it all the time. I never don't think of Rwanda and don't think of that genocide. I don't think of Central Africa. I don't think of the genocide. Right now in the Congo, in the battle that is happening in the Congo, the Rwandan government is supporting some of the rebels, and I think, okay, this is the Rwandan government. So, I think of that genocide. So many people do think of it constantly. It's part of a narrative that people who study and think about genocide definitely think about Rwanda. I think the Holocaust was the first example we saw of a systematic attempt to very rationally and logically build a killing machine, in a way to just kill millions and millions of people. I mean, no, you don't even have the idea of what it took to come up with, the final solution, right? When they come up with the systematic ways of building ovens and building, what you're going to do to get rid of the bodies and what you have to do to think of that. This wasn't just an impulsive, wave of violence that took over a people, as what happened in Rwanda over a period of many weeks. It was systematic and very carefully thought out and planned out. How are we going to do this? We're going to round up these people. We're going to transport them from this area to these camps. And then we get them in the camps. They're going to work for us. Some of them will just kill because they don't have any value to us. But the others, they're going to work for us doing different things. And then when they can't work anymore, we will kill them. And then we're going to kill them in these ways. You can't, it's just, human beings can't even hold that in their head that I can't, that people thought of doing that. And so that's why we think of that so much, that, wow, that happened, but Rwanda, rest assured that those of us who are And even in Africa, right? In Africa, people are thinking about the Rwandan genocide all the time. This is part of a thing, the remembrance of what happened to Rwanda. So anyway,
Mm.
uh,
Did this happen like 10 years ago or like
no,
15 years
Rwanda
ago?
genocide happened in 1994. Yeah, 30 years ago.
How, how,
Yeah.
like, when the effects of it, like, how far into, um, like, when were people like in refugee camps, like, up until, like, because there were refugee camps as well, right? During in like
Yeah,
Rwanda time.
for both Hutus and Tutsis, actually. Yeah, in Rwanda. But I mean, it was a blood. Dude, I'll send you I'll send you a link to a video you can watch. Frontline did a video on it. I used to show it in my class all the time when we talked about
Okay.
war, uh,
I
and
remember. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, it's incomprehensible. Yeah, yeah, it's
I remember.
incomprehensible.
When I don't know if you remember this, but I texted you one summer. It was like maybe it was like 2018, and I
Hmm.
was telling you that I was working inside of a Urban Outfitters warehouse, and I met this one guy named Bienvenu, who was
Hmm.
Rwandan, and I met so many. I had my first like World in Conversation experience in Social 19, so I was like pumped
Ah,
up, And then that summer I was in this warehouse with just such a diverse background, a variety of people from all over the world, and one of them was this guy named Bienvenu who was Rwandan. He told me how he was in a refugee camp, and I texted you because I was like, you should bring him
yeah,
in class to talk
yeah,
about it. But I remember him telling me about being in the refugee camp and then coming here. And there were so many incredible stories from
ah,
people in that
dude,
warehouse.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like this
yeah,
girl from
yeah,
Congo that was young, sending money to her parents. This other guy who was Latin, was an accountant, and then he had to come here and work in a warehouse, but he was an established accountant. Like there was so many
yeah,
stories there. I was like,
yeah,
wow. But the
yeah,
Rwandan guy, Bienvenue, which is welcome in French, I thought that was the coolest name.
yeah.
But yeah,
Listen, I just
yeah.
put this link about this. It's a Frontline. It's called um, "The Triumph of Evil," and it's about the genocide. And I think it's 800,000 people in 90 days, as I recall, were the numbers. Anyway, it was
That's
definitely
wow.
worth. It's disturbing. It's incredibly disturbing to watch. Yeah, incredibly disturbing. But anyway, going back to that
These
question, why the Holocaust? Because there's a Holocaust. You know, it took hold of the psyche because once we got out of World War II and people had a deep understanding that that happened, and not just Germans, but all others that Germans employed, right? And you everybody people were stunned. Like how did that happen? How did human beings act in a logical, rational way in that way to
mhm,
murder so many people, destroy so many lives? And so the academics, the psychologists and the sociologists and anthropologists were just for years, for 2 decades, just were constantly studying the human mind and how people would operate in crowds and how people could follow and do things that other people told them to do and this kind of stuff, right?
mhm.
Follow leaders.
The
And so so we were so that just it just so it built almost like a structure of a of a global conversation about the Holocaust, and it built it into the psyche. So it's the zeitgeist of life itself. So you now have all this remembrance of stuff related to the Holocaust because it was the first time in modern human history that we saw human beings do something like that,
mhm,
rational and thoughtful ways. There's one thing about when you study World War I and you just see trench people lined up in trenches in the nerve gas that they used to kill one another, or just the Civil War in the US. The blood, the violence, the bloodshed. There's so much, but man, the Holocaust, what they did. So anyway, that's why it's that grabs on now, right? Like that's in the zeitgeist. So you don't extract that. It's like once you have a holiday in a nation, you don't remove the holiday. Like we have President's Day. President's Day means nothing in the US anymore, but we're not going to get rid of it. It's part of it's here. It's not going to go away. So, why do
Mm,
we celebrate President's Day and not a different day? Well, because we do, and that's what it is, right? Yeah.
mm. Huh. You just don't get rid of it.
Nah,
It
you
just
don't get rid of
stays.
it.
Just
We might get
stays.
rid of President's Day, actually. That one seems to be dropping pretty low on the list. Yeah, the Trail of Tears is a different one. Like, so, if you're part of certainly the tribes who were, uh, but it's but but that we're in a nation where you can't fully recognize the genocide that happened here in that way, right? So yeah, it's
Mm,
also part of a long drawn out decades and in some ways centuries long process of destroying the lives of the indigenous peoples here. So the Trail of Tears in some ways was one of the last vestiges of that, one of the last acts by the
when
modern
you
youth.
when you say you can't fully recognize, you're saying that because there's things that don't exist to be able to hold that in memory anymore, or like we
Well,
can't recognize it because we've just moved past it in such a like way that's like not acknowledging or aware of what
I
happened,
think
or
it's
when you say can't recognize, what is?
I think it's yeah, it's more the second, like it's really tough to hold in place the story of this nation, which is it's a really cool story, right? I mean, most of the people who came here, obviously there were very wealthy people who came, especially early on, but nonetheless, across the board, most immigrants who came to this country came with nothing more than just hope that they could start over and hope that they could make something happen, and so you got the story that this nation opened up that possibility, right? That people weren't living here and there's this land and they conquered the land and they cracked it open and they, kind of thing, right? Which, by the way, is one of the thoughts about where the term cracker comes from because people kind of cracked open
Oh,
and has nothing to do with cracking a whip or something like that. Cracker is a derogatory term for white people that was started
what?
by other white people using it toward white people, wealthier white people using it for poor white people. So that's the idea of kind of cracking open the land, right?
Hmm.
Anyway, um, so you have that's the mythical story of the United States, which has truth to it, obviously, right? But you can't. How do you include in here that there were people living here, so everything that happened? You had to get rid of them first. That's a very inconvenient part of a story that you can't really integrate that. And then if you're going to integrate it, how do you feel really good about it? How do you put your hand over your heart at the Super Bowl and sing the national anthem when first off, one of the teams is named Chiefs, right? So that's already a reference to the indigenous peoples that were living here. And then
Hmm.
you're speaking about God and the favoritism of God and like all that, the divine place of this special nation, right? But you've got all the violence that happened to
Hmm.
make that occur. People can't hold those two things in their heads. I can't hold it in my head, and I trained to be able to hold those in my head, and it's very difficult for me. So that's what I mean when I say you can't. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. It like relieves from mourning, you
Mm,
know? It's like
mm.
it brings me back to your class, like what does mourning do? It's like you're like leaving out the opportunity to mourn in some way and like also be grateful or like reflective by leaving that part of
Yeah,
the story out.
yeah, 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 yeah. 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 That's the morning, Huh. Okay. Anyway,
Mm.
can we go go to you have another question or another comment? Man, I don't know where Kenny from
How
KC, Kansas City, Missouri. How would the American approach to mass school shootings change if we had a national mourning policy like South Korea? I think we would actually we would take it seriously. We would actually have to feel what this meant, that we had a society in which these kinds of shootings were happening on I'm going to say a regular basis, because look, we have how many thousands upon thousands of schools do we have in classrooms all over the country, and people going every single day, and we don't have that. It's not, so we can't say it's happening all the time, but it's happening an extraordinary amount of time, relatively speaking. And I think if we actually took time to hold on to what that is, I think maybe we would start to feel the call to come up with some kind of solution, and not just accept that this is part of the American way of life, which is kind of in many ways what it is, right? Guns have become part
Mhm.
of the American way of life, and that's, you know, for better or for worse. You can say, okay, well, it's the Second Amendment, and like, okay, that's great. That's the American way of life. And so when you have guns, when you have so many guns, which is far more guns than each person here, right? When we do that, then there are going to be consequences and repercussions for that. So it's like driving, right? I have the idea that everybody is going to be a pretty decent driver, but the fact is that some people are going to speed, some people are going to be on their phones texting, and we have to. And some, just like flying, they ask you now, do you have any lithium ion batteries in your luggage underneath the plane? And all we say is like, no, I don't. And if they don't scan your bag going into the plane, it's just based on me saying, no, I don't. But like, why would I believe? I'm like, bunch of knuckleheads, man. Why? I don't, half my students, I wouldn't even trust them to water my plants if I went away. Hey, come to my house. Here's the watering can. Just put a little water in the plants. I wouldn't trust them to do that. So why would I trust people that know that they don't have any lithium ion batteries in their suitcase, right? But we do, right? And so I'm trusting that the person coming at me at 50 miles an hour on this 2-lane road isn't texting on their phone, right? But we do.
Mhm.
How do we? So, but people won't. They'll screw up, and people will screw up with their guns, and that's just the price we pay. And if
Mhm.
we warning piece on that, maybe we'd say, like, you know what? Maybe that's not the price we want to pay. Maybe there's another way we could do it.
Right.
And if it
Huh.
doesn't mean taking away the guns, it just means maybe there's another way we could do it. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. It's like, where do
Yeah.
we? Huh. I don't know. Yeah. I was just made me think like, how much do we put our value on like consequence or risk again? Oh,
That's what we would
like,
talk about, right? This would be the national conversation, but it's really hard to have that. So the best we can do is come up with things like run, hide, fight. You know what I mean? I mean, that's it. And I'm gonna give my 5-year-old kid, I'm gonna send him off to school with a bulletproof backpack. That's it. That's where we're at. That's the best we can do. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
wow.
I guess it seems to me like we could come up with something a little bit better than that. But that's it. And so, like, okay, well, there you go. But if we had
Wow.
national days of mourning, and we had to sit around and feel the kinds of things that we'd have to feel, maybe we would be compelled to something else. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Reb L, I'm with you. South Koreans, they have a different level of respect for themselves. And they have a different level of respect for other people. They really, you just have you just are aware. And when you're in South Korea, you are just aware of what other people are doing and thinking all the time, and what they're thinking of you. And you don't want to stand out, and you don't want to do something wrong. So it's a really, really nice, it's a really nice feeling, man. It's so nice to feel like people are going to be respectful of me, and I, in turn, am being asked to be respectful of them. And I know they'll be respectful. Yeah. Wait, hang on. So the onion catto, Jeff, can you put that up so I can read it? Once you said that you stepped out into Japan, you realized a culture that you were never going to understand. Yeah. I think what I meant by that from right away, from my first day in Japan, as I walked around the street surrounded by Japanese people, and started interacting with Japanese people. And now I feel this in Korea, right? Only the difference is Korea, I feel like because I'm spending so much time there and talking to so many people, I'm starting to really understand. But at the time in Japan, I just felt like it was so different, the feeling than anything I had ever experienced, that I'd never get it. And every time I tried to hang my thoughts on something, because it's Shintoism and Confucianism and so on, and Buddhism, I just felt like I couldn't really. It was like, I would read something, and then as soon as I'd read it, I think, oh, I think I get that, and I'd think back at it, and it would be a little blurry. You know what I mean? I think, oh, I got this, and then it would suddenly be blurry. I'm like, wait, what was that? I thought I just got that, and I had that in Ethiopia, by the way, and a similar kind of experience.
How are these philosophical beliefs, or like Shintoism, Confucianism,
Yeah,
Buddhism? How are they showing? How are they representing themselves in like Japan,
just
Japanese
man,
culture?
the way people thought, the way they mourned, the way they loved, the way they were thinking about work, the way they were thinking about destiny. There were so many things. But mind you, it's very similar now in Korea. But the thing is, I'm now starting to understand it. So now I understand Japan. I'm actually getting able to comprehend it. But at the time, I
Mm,
said to myself, "No, we're not. I'm not.
mm.
I'm never going to get there." But I've really had to work at it.
Can
Yeah.
you pick out one of those categories that you listed and like help us see what were one of those things that was like, oh, that was at the time bizarre to me.
Well, um,
Or like destiny, love, the way they
no.
thought about work.
How about
Um,
just how about like a really simple, uh like a quietness, right? Like there's just like which was blown away by, a respectfulness and a quietness that I'm just like, whoa, man. I can't. We'll talk about this at different times. This would actually be really
okay.
good to talk about at some point from Korea. We'll do
Mm,
a
mm-hmm.
Korea, and I'll do it with some
Um,
Koreans actually, and we'll like really talk about it. Yeah,
but anyway, you were
yeah,
saying like a calm.
yeah. There's just something, but
Okay.
we'll come back to it. That's a
Yeah, yeah,
really good
yeah.
question. I appreciate it. Yeah, and the
Of
problem
course.
is it's such a complex thing that's going to take me a long time to really uh, to
Hone in on or like
to
hammer
hone in
down
on,
on.
man, and to make it clear. So I'll come back to
Right.
it. All right,
Yeah.
man. Uh,
We look forward to that.
all right, Jeff. Do we have
For
any other questions?
Yeah, for a class 8 highlight video, I was thinking of the title, Who is Thy Neighbor? And
Ah,
the idea being, with South Korea, it might be a little bit easier for people to mourn together because they're physically a lot closer to one another. Their cities are more connected. It's a lot easier and quicker for you to get from
yeah,
one part of the country to another. Whereas in the United States, the fastest way to get from the east to west coast is like a 4 hour plane trip. Like, and if you
yeah.
drive it, it's going to be at least a day, maybe even two.
Yeah, Koreans say that. They really say that a lot. Yeah,
And so that goes
and
to a comment.
it's a peninsula that's really cut off as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
So this is a comment that was made, and then there's a response to what this person said. So if you could read this out loud.
So I'm in upstate, the real upstate New York. I like that. And we pray for all and everyone. The government does what it does. All that matters to me and my small community is sending out peace and love. Okay, I really like that. I ain't asking nobody for nothing if I can't get it on my own, right? I know that's a double negative. It is a quote. But we also have that very special heart of gold. Yeah, I got that. Yep. I don't need to search for it. It still beats. We help out others with grief nationwide. I'm sure some places feel more than others. Yep. Myself, grief is displayed outward. If displayed outward, I feel it brings shame. Yeah, that's a thing, right? Like to each their own. May love and peace rule our great land. I'm beginning to believe Trump is a hippie in disguise. Yeah, you know what? I know, man. There's a part of that that I feel like that Trump comment. Yeah, and I think I think what Jeff just said about it's such a massive nation that we can feel this in small communities, but and even we could link all these small communities together in a particular region, but like for an entire nation to just kind of shut down in this way, it just uh, feels like just we wouldn't do that. We couldn't do that here. Yeah. Well, we could if something really massive. So you are blessed to live in a small community where people care about each other. If our government dictated days of mournings, the U.S. would be perpetually in mourning. Yeah. Well, we wouldn't, the government couldn't dictate it. People wouldn't even pay attention. They wouldn't care. They would absolutely not pay attention. We could have something horrific happen and we could come out. If Trump did it, people who supported Trump would all think it was the most wonderful thing. Let's have this day of mourning because this huge catastrophe just happened. Oh my God, right? And if it was not Trump, if it was a Democratic leader, then all the Republican people would say no. I mean, we're divided in that way. And Korea's divided as well. They are incredibly divided right now, politically speaking. And yet the day of mourning was not questioned. We're doing the day of mourning. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, that's the crazy thing. But again, it's a smaller country. People are very similar to one another. People have a lot of pride because Korea's gone through so many things in a very short period of time. And they're proud about that. And they foster that. So it's a lot easier. Yeah.
This is a little bit different of a phenomenon, I think. But when we were talking about communities caring for one another or like America's disconnect, I looked up. There was this one phenomenon I remember in psychology, and it was called. I looked it up. It's called urban overload, and I just wonder what the difference is between like Korea or the U.S. Like when you're in urban communities,
Yeah.
because of the heightened or increased amount of stimulus that
Yeah.
people experience in cities.
Yeah.
Like let's say you're a bystander and someone is injured on the street. Like
Yeah.
there's a less likelihood that you would help that person because of all the stimulus surrounding you. But like if you're in a
Yeah.
smaller community that's less urban and maybe more
Yeah.
of like a smaller town, you're more likely to maybe like offer help because of the there's less stimulus that's surrounding you. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if that would
Generally,
be.
yeah, generally speaking, stimulus, but also, we've done these social psychological studies. I want to respond to Grandpa's Place
Oh yeah,
also,
go
by the
ahead.
way, what Jeff just put up.
Yeah.
No, but we've done these studies that, if you notice something, like here's one study, like you're sitting in you go into to an office where you're going to have an appointment with someone, right? And they set this up, and there's the study is they blow smoke underneath the door while you're waiting, like one at the office door. You're going to go through this door, you're going to have an interview or whatever, but they start putting some smoke underneath the door, right?
Right.
And they're going to see how you react. Well, if you're sitting there by yourself, almost 100% of the time, you're going to get up and be like, yo, whoa, what's going on here? But if we put even a single other person in that room with you,
That doesn't react.
and they don't react, they're just reading the magazine and they kind of look over and they see the smoke and they do nothing, you're going to react, half the time, right? Or whatever it is,
Yeah,
because that
yeah.
other person, So the idea
Information.
being yeah,
That's informational social influence. I remember
yeah,
that term.
exactly.
And then
Yeah,
and then normative social influence, which is
yeah.
where you're trying to get information from the person based off of their facial expression.
Yeah,
But anyway,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like you think, okay, so now urban overload, right? Well, now you got people all over you. I mean, oh my God, somebody falls off their bike in the middle of the street, and the car one car drives by, the next car drives by, the next car, and then pretty soon, like everyone's just driving by because nobody's stopping, or the
Right.
first person stops, and the moment that first person stops, everybody else stops. That's the
Mm.
thing. So but in a small
Uh,
town, you're more likely to know somebody, right? So that's important.
right.
And B, you're less likely to have that overload of so many other people that you're more anonymous. Like, well, you're not really anonymous, you're
Right.
less so, and you feel a connection. This is like Koreans feel a connection to other Koreans, and Americans, we do, and we certainly do in small towns, but not in the same way, man.
Right.
Like in this little town here, we live in a really small town, but it's a transient town. You have students coming and going. You got
In and out.
people coming and going, faculty, staff, other people coming and going constantly, man.
Right. Right.
Lori
So
and
like the
I,
difference in feeling of belonging is
yeah,
different here.
yeah, yep, it's
Right.
very different. Yeah.
So
Okay,
interesting.
Grandpa's
Wow.
place. We actually had it was almost it wasn't a day of mourning after 9/11, although I guess there maybe was an official maybe there was an official day. I don't really know. But Grandpa, are you saying there was an official day of mourning for 9/11? Because it turned into almost a week when, there was uh it was just news on television, and you didn't have game shows, you didn't have funny things, you didn't have late night shows there was no comedy. There were no commercials. There were no commercials. Nobody wanted to There's no business anywhere wanted to sell anything after
Mm.
9/11. And then it was sort of decided, is my recollection, it was decided, okay, we're going to start commercials now. It was like day 5 or 6 or something. I don't remember. And like, whoa, okay. Yeah, that was wild. Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Hey, Amy, welcome aboard. Uh, yeah, ask a question if you like. Grandpa, you don't
Is
remember if it was official. Yeah, yeah,
Do you think like because that was 9/11, that was one of the first I don't even remember 9/11, but that was one of the first like big attacks, right? Or
yeah,
where do you think there's like this thing of like crisis normalization, like as America
yeah,
goes through
definitely.
more crises? Okay.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I just looked it up. September 14th, 2001. So it was 3 days later, President Bush declared it a national day of prayer and remembrance. So that was right in this period when we still weren't, uh, where everybody was kind of mourning, but it wasn't recognized, except it was on that one day, the 14th. Yeah. And I don't think it really mattered on the 14th because everybody was still in the mourning period anyway, you know.
I
Hmm.
think I think 9/11 was the first time that the U.S. was attacked since Pearl Harbor, and in that way,
Yeah.
it's even harder for us to know how people felt during Pearl Harbor because it was so long ago, and not many people are alive that have experienced it. Um, but yeah, that's like the last one I can think of that it was like a direct an attack. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to go through
Mm.
office hours questions from Monday. So for
Yeah.
everybody, we did office hours with Lori,
Yeah.
where Sam flew solo for the first time on a stream. So and he did
Yeah,
good.
man. Switching cameras. I was doing the whole thing. And by the way, Pearl
You're
Harbor was
killing it.
different. Pearl Harbor was different too because that was a military base in Hawaii, and
That's
Hawaii
true.
wasn't a state at the time.
Yeah,
It became a state in 1959. So it wasn't like the U.S. was attacked. It was just a base was attacked. So
Americans
yeah,
did
it's
die,
funny
but
though.
it wasn't the
Yeah.
same.
All right. Do we have some questions for
So we're gonna skip the questions from office hours so that we can get
Yeah.
through questions from yesterday's class, which was "What are we thinking?" And it was an opportunity for students to ask Sam a bunch of questions. And here were the questions from the stream.
Towards the beginning of class, it seemed like you were making endorsements for DJT. That's interesting. What's my response to people who would make that assessment? I guess
What's
it's
DJT?
Donald
Oh,
James. Is
oh,
it James
oh, oh,
Trump?
oh, oh.
I
Okay,
don't even
okay.
know his real name. Nah, I think yeah.
It's
No, I'm
it's
not.
it's Donald Genius Trump, according to Trump.
Genius with a J. That's perfect. Keep everybody guessing. Well, I've just decided that we're going to now spell genius with a J. This guy, and be like, and then you'd have a bunch of his supporters and be like, "Yeah, okay, genius with a J."
No executive order.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, man, I don't. uh, I don't. Yeah, that I was making an endorsement. Nah, I don't. Well, I don't know. I guess it would just be mistaken. I'm not. I guess what I'm making an endorsement for uh, is just. I guess I want people to understand that. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I didn't feel like I was at all, but I guess it's kind of like earlier when I said the guy's like gold for me because he gives me so much to talk about, and yet I can't really talk about it. It's hard to genius. Yeah, I like that. I can't. I can't flew. I can't. The problem is even critiquing whoever's in power. I critique. Right? I mean, I'm going to say things about whether it's Clinton or Obama or Bush or you know or
Mm-hmm.
Biden or anything, right? And Trump. I mean, I'm going to make jokes about or have fun of. I mean, I always have. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
change. Reagan, Bush, senior, Carter. Well, Carter, I never taught under Carter. So Reagan was my first person I was teaching under. Uh, I guess the Trump,
Well,
with Trump,
aren't you doing what you're always doing? Just like trying to
yeah,
get those that are trying to demonize a certain side or like totally
yeah,
reject to bring them closer to um like contemplation or
or just
um
challenge something that people are thinking, right? And
right.
so I said a similar thing about Obama when Obama was elected in 2008. He was like, "This was awesome for me because Obama was giving me so much stuff, as the first half black president, right? Which made him a fully black president. But he gave me just because of his position and because of him being a man of color, for me teaching a class on race and culture and having to challenge the narratives, especially that we haven't made much progress at all. So many people say we haven't made any progress, and I'm like, well, you got a president who's half black, and then people say but he's not fully black or whatever, right? I mean,
Right.
just have fun with that. We'll have made progress when they're 100% black, or who knows. I mean, people always said lots of funny things, but
Didn't they say he
that
was
was
like
but I
Arab
said
at
a
one
similar
point or
thing
something?
under him, right? And I wasn't endorsing Obama, but I was saying like, "Hey, well, but this is really good for me." Whereas Biden was not. I got nothing from Biden. Well, I mean, I got none of us got anything from Biden. I think he was sleeping for 4 years. So, yeah, I don't know. Okay. So there you go. I guess that's how I would answer that question. Yeah. I have such a critique of Trump right now. I have such a critique of Trump, man. I mean, you can imagine. Like, I get so much stuff that I could just go on and on and on. But I had quite a pretty serious critique of Biden that I could go on and on and on, and I didn't, and I won't for Trump because this is not what I need to do. All right, man. Jeff, do we have anything else? Said, what's your opinion on cancel culture changing in the past to fit their narrative? Changing in the past to fit their narrative. Oh, meaning like the conservative narrative? I don't know what that question
No,
means.
so for instance, should the company that owns the rights to Tropic Thunder go back and get rid of the what the heck is Iron Man's
Oh,
name?
change the past to fit their
Change
norm. No, not at
exactly.
all. No, I hate that. I hate when I see, like the other day I saw this some or reference to a movie or a television show. Like, here's all the racist things, racist tropes or things that happen on a particular sitcom television show, right? From like 1975. I'm like, dude, that wasn't racist in 1975, man. You cannot look back. Like, Elijah, do you eat meat? Are you a vegetarian?
Yeah, I'm pescatarian right now. Like mostly
Pescatarian?
salmon.
All right. Okay. Oh, you eat fish. Okay. Well, then, in like 20 years, people might decide that eating fish is like the worst possible thing that any human being could ever do. So,
Yeah.
so we're going to look back at you and say you were a fishist or, like whatever. I
Yeah,
don't know.
the fish glutton. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Whatever.
Like,
We'll have some really horrible thing. Yeah.
well, my
Yeah.
mom was like that. Went back in like the early 2000s. She didn't want me eating like my first cheeseburger was in college,
Whoa.
because she didn't want me eating like any growing up. So I just stuck with that, right?
Yeah.
But she just no red meat at the time was considered unhealthy. Do you remember that time when they were
Oh,
like,
dude,
don't
it's still
eat?
conceived unhealthy. It
Yeah,
is
yeah,
unhealthy, man. I mean,
not all the
really. I
way.
mean, hang on.
Is it?
Well, it
Right?
depends on the meat, but mostly, listen, man, I think it's kind of, if you're eating a lot of fatty, it's probably you're better off to not be eating a lot. I think but who knows?
Well,
I don't know.
that's what she. But now it's like people are on like red meat diets
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like purely
Yeah,
um
I got you. I
to
got
get,
you.
but anyway.
Well, I mean, there's a
Sorry, took
lot
you off.
though. No, no, no. But there's also just, we live in this world where so much of our meat comes from factory farms and animals that are just treated in these really horrific ways. And fish that are treated in really horrific ways, right? Like these fish
Yep.
farms and fish ponds and fish that, like, if you visit them, yeah, like chickens in these little a tiny box that's just this big and it's just laying eggs one after another. Like, come
Saw
on,
that.
man.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
can't be eating that kind of food. Just eating food that is created out of those kinds of conditions
Yeah.
just cannot be good for the spirit of life itself. Right? That's all. We can just leave it right there. It can't be
I
good for the
believe in.
spirit of life itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I s- I could go on a rant right now. You hit like a chord for me, like with food.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe I'll talk to you about it off stream. It's a
Yeah.
side thing, but I feel
No,
that.
it's just, come on, man.
Hmm.
But it doesn't, I'm not saying like, so therefore don't eat meat or don't eat whatever or what, don't eat. I mean, no, that's
Yeah.
you decide that. But I feel like when I see factory farms and
Hmm.
I see how animals are treated, these beings, right? Um, I can't get past the idea that this is not good for the spirit of life. And that spirit is coming through the food and it's coming through the whatever, whether it's the meat or the eggs or the milk or whatever, and it's coming to me, putting it in my body, and it can't be right.
It's awful. It's so
Yeah.
sad. It's even like I'm totally with you on the spiritual aspect. And then also, like I remember hearing like if you're eating like all the cortisol and the stress that's like going through that
Yeah.
animal,
Yeah, for sure.
like
Yeah,
you're
yeah, for
eating
sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
It's
taking it in. Yeah. Yeah, no, Lori and I try to
Mhm.
buy all of our meat. It's free, free range, organic. The thing about living here in State College is we're surrounded by farms, so you can do that. But
Yeah.
um, But yeah, it's but what this is the life that this is the kind of world that we've created to feed people. So uh,
Hmm. It's
yeah,
like it's just objectifying food, like looking at a burger and not even thinking it's a cow. It's just a burger. It's not even like
yeah,
life.
that's right.
It's just a burger.
Well, this is why hunting for me is always has so much value that people they hunt, go hunt, take a life, right? If you eat meat, like I'm a big proponent of I don't think you have to. I don't judge people or whatever, right? But I feel like if you do, this is like the Korean thing with a week of mourning, you're going to have some time to think about life and death and people around you, right? Wow, that could be
Mm,
me, meaning that died in that plane crash. And that means like, but it could be any of these people around me. Or it could be me, and I'm connected to all these people. So let me just take a week out of my life or integrate into this week this sense of awareness of the fragility of all these people around me who I have something in common with. This national week of mourning. Like how beautiful, that's such a beautiful thing, man. That's called community building, right? So um
mm, yeah.
how
Empathy
yeah,
building.
yeah, like why wouldn't we want that? And
Yeah.
well, you said I was going to respond to something though. What did you say right before I said that?
Uh, we were talking about, you said hunting, and I was
Oh yeah,
resonating with the
hunting.
hunting
Okay.
piece. And
Yeah. So imagine like if people who ate meat, each person would like killed an animal, right? I love burgers. I eat burgers every day. Okay, go kill it. You're gonna get your opportunity to kill a cow, right?
Mhm,
And you can do it just like cows are killed, which is often a slug in the back of the head, kills them
mm,
quite quickly. Uh,
right.
but you're gonna get that opportunity to do that. And imagine like how that because I have killed, right? And so like animals that I eat, chickens, rabbits. I've never killed a cow, but
Hmm.
and
Do you go hunting?
I have hunted in the past, but I killed a rabbit hunting. Uh
Okay.
but I
So I'm
don't
like, take
really
me
but I
with you.
didn't really hunt. But I never got a license or anything, this was in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
countryside.
Right. But
Um
you were saying you kill a
but
cow, right? You like hit it in the back
I
of the
I
head.
killed a rabbit.
And
We were having rabbit stew when I was in Ecuador, and we had 2 rabbits that we got at the market, and we had to kill them. So I killed one, and my friend killed the other, right? And I'm like, "Yeah,
right.
I broke its neck, but I'm gonna eat the rabbit." So I feel a responsibility to do that. And,
Yeah.
and and I and it just I felt spiritually connected, like I'm gonna take a life, and somebody might take my life, but the idea being, like, it feels I don't know, it just elevates,
Wholesome. More,
wholesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. That,
It's respect.
mm,
Yeah. It's respect. And so, yeah.
that's the main, I've also wanted to go hunting, like ever since like I went from vegetarian to like going
Mhm.
vegetarian completely like rebalanced like the way I view food. And then
Mhm.
coming back to it. And like now I don't even want to eat a burger. Like if I'm going to eat something, I try to do it wild caught or, hopefully it's
Yeah.
sourced accurately or like ethically it's like truly wild caught, you know. But like I don't even want like a salmon burger. I want to have the fillet so I can like
But
visualize it and like
have
see
you
it.
fished at all? Hey, do you catch fish?
I haven't. I felt one time I fished when I was like 7 years
I
old,
know. Okay,
8 years
listen. So
old,
this is
and I got a
this
sunfish,
is
but I felt so bad unhooking it.
no,
I
okay,
felt
you gotta go
so bad.
fishing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We'll hook you up with someone who can take you fishing. It's a big trout
yeah.
fishing area. So go fishing and then, catch a fish and then, cut its, you can learn how to fillet. Whoever you fish with will teach you can how to fillet. You just cut its head off and you fillet
Right.
it and you eat it. And so I used to fish all the time. So I've caught hundreds of fish and filleted hundreds and hundreds of fish. So when
Yeah.
I eat a fish, I know what it is to have a fish moving in your hand and the tail is going back and forth, and then you just put the knife right under the one gill and chop its head off. And I
Just
know
say like
that.
thank you.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
really. yeah, it has a very yeah, social 18 fishing stream. We need to get Dexter back, man, to take us. Uh, huh.
Dexter.
Anyway, that's the thing, right? That's the stuff that. But for me, it's not. I aim from West Coast. U.S. is uniquely politically divided that even science is politicized. Yeah, yeah. Is the U.S. Yeah, like people's views on abortion, access, vaccines, climate change are based on their politics. Well, people are so Amy. So people are right, but science is politicized, but not, but less among scientists. Really, like scientists. Okay, there are some people that we dive in. I mean, there. I know a lot of climate scientists. They're in it. They're in it because they believe the the climate is changing, and they believe that they do research because they want to understand A, what's going on, and B, are there things that we can do to slow the process down? And they are, do they get caught up in encountering findings that support their hypotheses? With the hypothesis is that the earth isn't truly warming up and so on. Well, yeah, at some level, some do, but the good ones are not. There's general consensus among scientists that climate change is real and it's happening and so on. And there are some scientists in this world of science who get caught up in the politics of things. But most people are not. They're just doing their tiny little piece, their piece of the puzzle, and it's like a giant, massive, 50-story hotel that takes up a huge block in a city, and they're just doing their work inside of one closet, inside one room of that hotel, and that's it. They don't see the whole thing. They're just busy with that one little corner of their reality. And that's what most scientists are doing. There's no room for politicization, man. They're just, if you could see like the title of some of like at Penn State, Elijah, you get this, right? We get like our daily thing from Penn State, and you see some of the titles of the talks that some of these that people are giving around campus. And I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, what is that, man? It's just like 9 words strung together that I can't even make sense of, right? And they're studying one little tiny piece. Like there's no politics there, man. It's just, they're just too busy, got their heads inside of whatever that's in. So so there is some of it, but mostly it's not. But we are divided.
Mostly,
Yeah. But mostly it's not super politicized. It is by people on the outside though, like with vaccines, like, so you got RFK right now who's saying like, well, vaccines, well, there's a lot of question about whether vaccines are actually effective. I saw that he said that the other day, and I'm like, bro, actually, the people that study vaccines and develop vaccines and do research on vaccines and who track vaccines, there's very little on most vaccines. There's very little question about it. You know what I mean? There's just you've now politicized it into something, but the folks that are on the ground doing the work and they got their heads inside of either their microscope or their statistical calculations of health. There's not a lot. Yeah. So abortion access is a big one. Yeah. I hope people can think about it on partisan lines. Yeah. Well, mostly you would think with abortion, people would be thinking about it on spiritual lines. Just like, when does life begin? And like, why do I sign up for my political party is going to answer my question about something as deeply thoughtful is when life begins, and whether people should have the right and the ability to end life in a certain sequence of time. If we have the idea that life begins beyond conception, and so, yeah, you would think that, but it becomes politicized, and we let it become politicized, unfortunately. So, yeah. Yeah, James Anthony, fly fishing gives more satisfaction as it takes more effort and skill. Yeah, fly fishing is pretty cool. I've only done it a few times. My dad was really an expert fly fisherman.
Yeah.
Uh,
What do you do fly fishing? Is that like somewhere you have to go, or is it anywhere?
all over here, they're all people. People fly in to State College from all over the world to fly fish. Just right, man.
What
We
do you
have some of
do?
the
What is are they
fly
like,
fishing is where you tie a fly that mirrors. You should watch some videos on it. So your fly is what it's a hook. It's a little you 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 tie it with materials that will make it look like various insects, right? Tiny
mm-hmm.
insects. Some flies are big, but most are very small. And people get really good at tying them. You want to make the fish think it truly is an insect, right? So you
Uh-huh.
like your and
Not
there
only
you
did
go.
I look up what is fly fishing on YouTube, and the first thing is from a channel called Visit PA. So let's just
Oh
watch a
man,
second.
look at that. Yeah, there we go. Wait, we're not going to get in trouble by
Now we'll
watching
be
this.
fine.
And see, his line sits on top of the water, right? It's going to float on the water. It
Uh,
doesn't go over. So the fly is going to be either A on top or B go under the water a little bit. But he's going to decide how far under the water that fly is going to go if it goes under. And see how he's like
got
his
it.
arm is going back and forth, and you got to land that thing in the right spot. It's such a, a meditative process. It's very, very cool.
Uh,
See, there's the line.
I like the selection of
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
So
cool.
it's constant. You're just like picking it up, throwing it out, picking it
Yeah,
up, throwing
yeah,
it
you're
out,
dropping
picking it
that
up.
thing somewhere. You're gonna because fish aren't swimming, man. The fish right there, they're hanging out in certain spots. See how the line is laying on top of the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fish are mostly gonna stay in one spot. So he's just gotta find
Uh,
them.
and so for the most part, the fish are chilling, and then like
Yeah.
once it lands, they'll most likely attack it in like a second if it's in the right
Yeah,
spot.
or they won't because he doesn't have a good fly in there. Either A, they don't want to
Uh,
eat that particular insect, or that an insect that looks like that, or B, he didn't tie it well enough so it actually doesn't look like a real insect, right? Because fish are not
they're like, I
dumb.
know that's fraud. That's
I
fraud
know
right
it's
there.
fraud. It's fraudulent. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That
Yeah.
is interesting. I like
Yeah.
that.
Like a fake fly. Yeah, a fake insect. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, what do you think about Trump cuts ending funding, dude? The Trump cuts to both NIH and the Trump cuts to USAID and Trump cuts even to government, man. Like, like it's so fascinating that how we had the it's all Eric. It's all problematic to me. It's definitively problematic to me. And I had this conversation with someone the other day. They were saying about how the government is bloated. I'm like, how the hell do you know the government is bloated? We need to cut the government by 20% or whatever. I'm like, how do you know that? How do you know if you're not? You know what I mean? Like, who are we suddenly become experts on how to run a government? And all these people, right? Because Trump says, "Oh," and what's his name, Elon Musk. The government's too big, and we got to cut it back, and we can cut all these jobs and save all this money. It's like, wait, why do you think that? Where do you go that? Where do you go that is bloated? I go to my post office, and there's hardly anybody working there. You know, what I mean, the lines are long. How's the post office bloated, right? I mean, one thing
Mm,
after another. We had
mm,
with the plane that crashed into the elevator, and there was one person working at the Reagan Airport in the control tower. There should have been two people, or there were two. There should have been three. Whatever. They were down a person, and it's like, okay, so here's what we need to do. Therefore, we need budget cut. We need to cut the number of people working in control towers. Like everything we cut is going to have an impact on things. So, like how the hell are you going to do that? Just like DEI, you try to impose these DEI measures from above that we're going to just tell everybody that you have to be diverse in this way. And then we're going to just put a mandate down from above, and we're going to demand that everybody across the country is diverse, follows diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, okay, that's silly and that's stupid and that doesn't work. Okay, well, nor does just randomly cutting stuff and thinking that it's still going to function. We're going to cut the number of people at the IRS who do tax audits. We're going to cut the number of people who go around and study bridges and figure out which bridges we really need are in a dangerous state of disrepair. We're going to cut everywhere we cut is going to have consequences for human beings. So for all of us. And so how do we what is this? Right. And I'm not saying you don't cut, because, you come in, you always want to have a certain amount of cost cutting. But this is just silly. This is.
But you're saying like these blanket statements that are just like calling for a specific solution are,
and then
there's
everyone
no
just
thoughts.
following along, thinking our the government is so we're out of control with our spending. Yeah, maybe we are, but what are you going to do when at one thing after another just gets cut, gets deregulated? What do you do now when your airplane? You're on an airplane and they just decide, okay, the airplane's not going to fly now. So, all right, well, we can't. We have a maintenance issue or a pilot issue. Okay, so you're on your own. Who are you going to complain to? Well, we've developed some avenues of complaint. But let's say we deregulate that because the airlines want to roll that back. Okay, now you get stuck out in Kansas City, Missouri, Elijah, and the United Airlines or American Airlines just washes their hand and says, well, you're on your own. I'm sorry, come, but we'll reroute you, but we're going to sing you out tomorrow. Well, I need a hotel. Well, okay, I'll have to get a hotel. You have nothing, you know what I mean? And we have nothing. We have no government agency to oversee that, to demand that the airlines treat you with some kind of respect, right? Okay, well, there you go. We don't have that because we've cut all that stuff out of the budget. Who the hell we think's what's gonna get cut out of the budget, man? That's gonna make our lives better. You know what I mean? But now we've got people thinking this, right? It's just
thinking,
that's
interesting.
All of this, cheering on Doge or whatever this guy. Come on, man.
Now that you're saying this, it's
no, go ahead. Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. So
it's like here at Penn State, we have all these budget cuts, right? We just start cutting. And it's like, dude, the president just sits in her silly office going we're going to cut out all these pieces. But people like us, we look around, we're like, oh, damn. Do you realize the impact of this? You'd made this sweeping cut up here, but down on the ground, all of these things, it's just like a series of negative occurrences or outcomes is one after another. And so okay, well, so we could say, all right, well, we have to do that. Okay, great. But your life isn't going to get better because of it, man.
Yeah. That's just made me think about the stadium, all the funding to the stadium.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yeah. All right. So wait, hang on. Death Zombie. What do you think of universities like mine that have sent emails with instructions to shelter undocumented students from immigration officers with the current administration? I can't imagine the university I can't imagine the university sending out an email like that. Then that came from central administration, man. I'd be like, oh God, man. Maybe I guess. I mean, there are universities, well, certainly not mine, man. Ours is far more conservative than that. We would never do that. But if you're a small private institution, yeah, I guess. But if you're a small private institution, ICE is never going to come for undocumented students at your institution anyway, man. They're not coming. So that's a meaningless email. That's an email.
How come they wouldn't?
Because they're not going to. Because you're not going to have many undocumented students there. And maybe it's a small community college somewhere in certain areas that maybe you would. And then, okay, that's a different story, right? Yeah, if it came from a DEI office, but it depends really on the university. Here we have very, very few undocumented students. And I know we have some because I've had them over time. Yeah. Did universities shelter Jewish students during the protests? Right. Some did. And some offices on universities sheltered Jewish students during the protests, absolutely, or took pains to ensure that Jewish students would be safe, and other ones didn't, and other ones were scrambling to try to figure out what these protests were. These are protests again during the in the past year and a half. But some universities were very, very careful about that and absolutely really made very strong attempts to take care of Jewish students. Mhm. All right, man, where are we at? Oh God, we're almost going on 2 hours. Okay. Can
That's
we?
the
I think
that's the
we got.
vibe.
Yeah.
I have one last thing to go over.
All right.
If you're up for it.
All right.
I accidentally
Is it?
closed the window, so give me 2 seconds. All right, here's a question. This is a comment in yesterday's class.
I'm sorry about the loss of your friend. Do you have a story of him you'd like to share that makes you smile when you think of it? Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Thanks for that, J. Cole, 2019. So this friend of mine, his name's Chris Yule. He was a professor. He's actually quite a famous biologist. He did a lot of work in the Amazon rainforest. In his midlife, he spent lots and lots of many years down in the Amazon. Actually, there's a real famous piece. If you're aware, Elijah, there was a thing that was calculated like how much like a hamburger. We talked about hamburgers, right? How much the hamburger costs, what's like the energy, how much water, how much land it takes in the
Right.
rainforest, right? How much CO2 goes up in the air because people cut down the rainforest to produce, to raise cows, to produce burgers, to beef and so on, right?
Right.
And
It's like
so
the
many
cost
millions,
before the
the
even production
cost.
of the hamburger, like the
And it was
total.
for quite a number of years, it was like a famous thing. It would show up on posters and things, one hamburger equals like all these things. Well, he was the one that came up with that. He was sitting in a little cantina in the rainforest somewhere, and he just took out a napkin and he just started calculating that, because this is what he did. They had this plot of land that they were plotting all this kind of stuff out. Anyway, he plotted all that and he just wrote it up somewhere, and then it just took off. And it was suddenly on all these posters, and he saw it because I had it on a poster on the door of my office, a small poster, but it was there. And he came over one day. He said, "Hey, look at that. That's really interesting." So that's a cool story
So
about him.
cool.
He
Wow.
was
And you didn't
really
know that? Did you not know that that was his thing?
no. Yeah, he spearheaded this Amazon in Berlin. Yeah. I didn't
Wow.
know that about him at that moment, but yeah, he was a real kind of a real special guy, really nice guy, good guy. Yeah, really always coming up with stuff like that. Like, like he'd come up with all these really
Just
interesting measures. Like his students would sit in the bathrooms in the dormitories, and then they would time how long people were in the showers, okay, on average, right? So the course of like they maybe 500 people, how long they would be in a shower, and then they would
wow.
average that out, and then they would get buckets of water, and they would turn the shower on, and they would see how much water they used, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they started calculating, like, okay, well, every student at Penn State, here's how much water gets used on the average
Wow.
shower. And if you could just get Penn State students to cut it down by like 30%, this is like how much
Mm-hmm.
water we could save. And water is recyclable. So we're
Wow.
not talking about saving water. We're talking about saving pure water, because it takes a lot of money and energy to purify water. So that's what it is. Water
Right.
just exists on a loop, but somewhere in that loop, you got to purify it. So that's where the cost comes in, because it costs so much
Right.
money to do
Wow.
that. Anyway, so
Wow.
he would do stuff like that, which is really genius, It's
See,
very simple. Yeah.
It makes it so digestible for people to like see the impact of like what they're doing,
Yeah,
of their
exactly. So
behaviors.
then Penn
Yeah.
State took the lead in so many of these really cool ways. You'd go around campus, you'd be like, listen, if you just do this, And if everyone does it and you do it and everybody else does it, here's going to be the result. So he just created all these really ingenious ways of us for people to visualize data like that.
Yes.
Your one
Wow.
hamburger that you eat, here's what it means, right? And like that kind of stuff, it's really cool. So
More mindful, more awareness.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. Sorry for your loss, Sam.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, he was a really a good duck. Yeah, man. Really a good man. My really, really, really close friend, dear friend for almost 30 years here. Yeah. He taught in the same classroom that I teach in. So
Oh, really?
yeah, in that same room. Yeah. So it's
Wow. That makes that room even more just powerful thinking about it.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, I was thinking about him yesterday. Yeah. So all right, listen. We'll head out. It's been 2 hours, man. I can't believe we've been talking for 2 hours. I can't believe anybody. Oh my God. All right.
It was last week too. I'm pretty sure we've been zooming.
All right, listen,
We-
man. I think Lori and I are going to be back on Monday. We're going to try different times. Maybe we'll do it like in the morning some days or in the afternoon some days. And we want to kind of do a few things with facilitators too. So
Are you gonna announce some way? Because I had no idea that was happening. I just ended up being on YouTube at the time you were
Derek
streaming.
says you can't say awareness. It means woke. You can't say
Haha,
if
yeah,
you say
might
awareness.
be. Yeah, my
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah. Well, listen, stat enthusiast. The problem with the government getting out of your life is that you do have there's so many ways in which that government is really holding your life and that you don't see. And in really very valuable ways. And so, like if you take medication and, we have a government that ensures that, medication is regulated. And, when we didn't have that, people died because people just put pharmaceuticals out in the world that were unregulated. And the government does that. And we ensure that people don't sell you pharmaceutical. Well, we still do, but that actually do what they say they're going to do. There are all sorts of things, you know what I mean? Seatbelts in cars, that how many people watching the stream would have children or parent or wouldn't be here because they would have died, or have children who would die, or going to have grandchildren who would die because Ralph Nader didn't come along and demand seatbelts in cars, and the politicians didn't follow it up and say, yeah, we're going to do seatbelts, and not just across the lap. We're going to do seatbelts across your shoulders. And people could say, well, I didn't want to wear them. Well, I know, but but you're alive, or your child is alive, and
Yeah,
that all sorts of stuff like that. So,
that's
that we don't have more plane crashes than we do because, of government intervention. So the government actually, yeah, you want smart and efficient government. I know, but stat enthusiasts, the problem is, I think it's what I was saying earlier. I want the same thing, but I don't necessarily know that it's a massive bureaucracy. I don't know that it is. I mean, just because we're told that it is doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And that's, I think, what's really, really important. Because everywhere I see, I just see things that are cut back. We don't have enough auditors at the IRS, right? We don't have enough. We don't have enough, police. We don't have enough courts. We don't have enough this. We don't have enough that. Everybody who's part of the government is like, listen, we can't really fully do our jobs. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I mean, I know that if you just give people money, they'll say we need more and we'll spend more. Like I would have 10, if I had the money, I would put 10 more people on my stream team in my class. We produce a stream, it's good enough. But if I had the money, I'd have 10 more people and it'd be much better. But would it make it really that much better, or it just would be better? So, like, yeah, it wouldn't be that much better, and it's not worth 10 more people. But this is the thing. I don't necessarily know any of that. So, all right, listen, man. But I hear you. Okay. All right, we got to get out. Elijah, we'll see you. Jeff, we will
All
see
right,
you.
boss. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. See you, everybody. Be well, and we'll be in class. Have a cool class tomorrow.